What's going on, world? Welcome back to the channel. And yeah, today we're going to talk about Moho because I have now spent a good 2 months working with it, like on a daily basis. We're talking about 30 minutes here, maybe an hour to 2 hours there, but I've been consistent with it. I've gotten at the Black Friday sale, and I spent the first like week and a half just running through tutorials. If those of you guys who watch the stream sometimes, I'm a guy who dives deep into documentation as well. So not only do I have insight from like YouTube tutorials, but also documentation. And I've met some friends along the way through the Moho community, which has been fantastic. But I want to preface that this is not really a review. It's more of my perception of it based on my own needs for my own animation needs. So I think a lot of people will do like the cons, the pros. I'm just gonna kind of just run through it naturally. I don't have a script written or anything, so I might, if I kind of hone in on some positive aspects or negative aspects for too long, I apologize to the Moho makers, to the makers of Moho, in case, because I do have some cons. Uh, Overall, I'm very happy with the software. I do not regret the purchase at all. I feel like it will be used in my animation pipeline, although not as I have envisioned it from the beginning. So with that, let's get into it. I love the way the application is laid out. It just looks and feels cozy. Like there's something about it that I find very comforting. And that is a big deal for me because usually as an animator, you spend a lot of time, be it, just looking at the same screen day in and day out. And Moho to me looks really great. It's got an option, like if you're working on a high resolution, it's got an option to kind of double up or make the fonts larger in the UI. So there's an option in the Moho settings that you can jump into. It's simple, right? It's just kind of like my friend Steve says, it's almost idiot proof, and it is in a way. So at first you are excited, right? You jump into it, then you're like, wait, how do I do this? How do I do that? And it kind of feels foreign at the beginning. It's like, wait, why do they do it this way? But it quickly, once you kind of get around to Moho, and I would say give it about 10 hours, right? So give it like, I don't know, 10 days, do an hour each day. I would almost guarantee anyone who does that, after that short amount of time, you will be kind of like in love, engulfed by the software. It's great in that aspect. It almost has like this warm, cozy feeling that just wraps over you. And it is great for uh, production of assets even, meaning like for drawing. It's got some pretty good vector tools for drawing. Not great, but pretty good. And it's got these brushes, right? You can actually use vector brushes that look like they're rasterized, right? Like bitmaps. So you can get like a lot of like Photoshop looking stuff. Let's say, you can do like foliage, trees, ground texture. It's really impressive because it's vector based. You can scale it up, scale it down, and Moho does come with a great sort of easy to use scene management, like scene adjustment. So like if you're working at a certain resolution, you can just scale it up. It'll kind of scale everything up for you. So that is a big pro in my opinion. There are things that do kind of like pop up from time to time. I did notice that it crashes on me once in a while. I would say, and I'm on the Mac, but I'm on one of the newer MacBook Pros with the M3. It will crash on me like once every 2 days, I would say. It would just like boop, just disappear. I'll get the error message. But to Moho's, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how often it saves. Every time I have crashed, when I restarted it, right, it'll attempt to restart itself. It'll ask me, would I like to recover the file? And it brought it back every time. It will open it up. It kind of saves it as a different file name at the top, but it does recover every time, at least for me on the Mac. I do have some friends using it on PC. I can't comment on that. On the Mac, so far, it's been pretty great with recoveries. But is that a great feature? Because it comes at the cost of actually a con, right? Like you did crash. Why did you crash in the first place? So I do get that. Second pro, I would say, is since I've gotten it, there's been already an update, and an update that is pretty great. Like during the first month of me having purchased it, I've noticed some difficulties, especially when it came to like the fill tools, where if you do a shape and you wanted to fill the color in, it seemed to have be dependent on how close you are. Like how, like if I'm trying to fill, let's say if I'm trying to fill her hair yellow at this resolution, whereas I can zoom in like this, like doing it here and doing it here, was a big difference, right? There was like no consistency. Like maybe if I'm doing it from too far away, it would leave some gaps. And if I did it closer, it would kind of overshoot. Like you guys can see an overshoot right here. It still does it. There's a little bit of an overshoot above her hair right here, if you can see. So I've noticed that it was way worse. It was really way worse. And then within a, like I said, 4 to 5 weeks of me purchasing this, they fixed it. And it's pretty great now. I mean, it's still, this is done with the update. It still has, again, like when you zoom in, there's these little things. So like once you get closer, you start noticing these little seams, right? I mean, it's cool. I actually like this look. I will show you guys here in, I will bring this in because ultimately the way I did it is I put in this kind of like a retro halftone effect. So I like these overshoots specifically on this animation, but you might not need those, you might be annoyed by this. And that's something that you should be aware of. And it does happen. So the fill bucket is not precise, right? And it's not fast whatsoever. You can actually hear it clicking. There's an option to allow it to click when it's connecting points. So sometimes when you just have a line with like a lot of vector points, you can't see them, but they're there. It will just, you start hearing clicks as it's trying to connect the dots, sort of, as it's building sort of like a boundary where to make the fill. There are options against it when you draw. If you're using the freehand tool, which is kind of their pen tool, you can click, autofill. So as you're drawing, it will try to like use the same line to fill. So if you're drawing a circle, it can auto connect, and then you can fill it in. That is a really good tool. There's also a tool when you hit X, I believe, on the keyboard, it brings up the magnet tool, which is fantastic for manipulation of points and just sort of adjustments of shapes. And that's sort of like what brings us into the animation part of the software, because everything I've been talking about thus far has been pretty much about creation of art and drawing, which we will go back to a little bit. But when it comes to the animation, you can still use these tools. Like I often animate points. Like if I wanted to like do like a water balloon or something, if I had a circle or a sphere that's been filled in, I can just use the magnet tool. And the cool thing is it animates those points that you're not even, sometimes you don't even see, the vector points are animatable instantly in a timeline. And one of the strengths of Moho would be the timeline. It is very, very like easy to navigate. Although I would love to have a bigger zoom than just this, right? I can zoom out a few times and I can zoom in a few times, but I don't have like super control of the zoom, which the timeline is important to me. So with that said, you can animate points, you can animate frame by frame. They do have layers, so everything that it's divisible by layers. So if you need to do a traditional drawing where you want to do a frame here of drawn animation, another frame, and whatsoever, you do that in a layer dedicated to that. If you're doing vector art, you do that on on a vector layer, which majority of the stuff you'll do is a vector layer. And then if you wanted to do like bone animation, you kind of like drop all your vector artwork into that bone animation layer, and then you're able to attach those pieces to the bones themselves. So with regards to the animation, it's pretty good. It is it's not great, but it's pretty good. And here is sort of like after 2 months is where I'm seeing sort of the same show, because it's a bit slow. Like if I was gonna give it a grade, I would say it's like a B- right now, because while it's great and it's fun for creating like rigs for animation, if you really take that into consideration, it's pretty quick to do those. But then when you actually have to animate them, the whole process is a little bit, not janky. Janky is not the right word. It's not even complex. I don't even know how to phrase it. Again, I said this is not a tutorial or not a review, but there's just something kind of like counterintuitive to it. It feels heavy, right? I'm having a lot of fun in the beginning of every project in Moho, but then once I'm kind of wrapping it up, or I'm getting to the animation stages, there's something that kind of almost feels like I have to go back sometimes to because you kind of set everything at frame 0 in Moho. Like there's a lot of times where I have to go back to that frame 0 to make an adjustment, or make an adjustment here and make an adjustment there, and then go back to my animation. And this kind of like going back and going forward. And granted, this could be improved in the future, like once my skills get better and I no longer need to do that. But I've noticed, I kind of have a flow now of what I want to do. And sometimes you just have to do that. And it almost feels like, like when you're playing a video game and then you have that, like, you got to kind of backtrack. You did this, now you got to backtrack to like deliver, and you got to go this, and you got to backtrack. And sometimes that just gives you like a not a good mental state with regards to animation, because you just want to be in the zone. Like, I want to go frame by frame, where I want to animate this, and I find it personally a little bit difficult on the animation side from that perspective, not from the animation itself. If you were given a rig, if you are working in a production environment and someone just hands you a ready rig that needs no edits, doesn't need any changes, and it says, hey, animate the shot, you have everything that you need, I think it would be a fantastic choice. But for like a one-man team working on something, I would not really struggle. It can be done, but it can be done easier, in my opinion, in other software packages. So that is that's kind of like sums up my take on it, right? Like, for example, the drawing tool itself. Like, if we were going to draw, let me go into a different one. Like, just to show you guys, like, this is a little dude that I made, and it's for game animation. Like, this guy's for game animation. I think Moho is fantastic when it comes to doing these like stuff like this, when you're just exporting something that's going to be stuck to this one camera view, and it's going to do this one job. It's great, right? They have awesome tools where you can kind of switch. I think they're called Vitruvian tool. I forget Vitruvian bone, something like that, where you can kind of build these swaps. So like, you can have different skeletons for different angles, and they kind of automatically hide and show. So you can do like these elaborate turns and swaps. Maybe you rigged a hand to be down here, but all of a sudden you got a drawing of a hand like that, which you obviously you just can't control with the same bones that you had down here. They have a system for that. So they have a lot going for themselves right here. It's getting there, right? What it doesn't have, I think it's in a little bit of the fundamentals of drawing tools, which I know Moho has not been known for like the strength of the drawing tools, but they are getting better. They're just not there yet. Like drawing with the freehand tool, which I was going to show you guys, or just talk about it. Let's right here. Let's make a we have to be on frame 0, by the way. So I already have a shortcut. And when you're on frame 0, you get this red box. But once you're there, and you make, let's say we'll make a vector layer, right? It doesn't matter what we call it. We can draw with this freehand tool. You can do points just like in Illustrator, but if you're drawing like this, you can see I have the fill tool now, right? So it's filling that shape. And let's go ahead and delete that. You can do like everything that you would think an animation tool needs to do. Yet there's a feeling with this that feels a little bit like non-precise for drawing. Like let's say if I wanted to draw, let's get rid of this nice little texture that we had, and hit OK over here. And it doesn't matter, like let's say if I wanted just to sketch stuff like that, like little rough stuff. Let's turn off this autofill, right? Like, if I'm just doing like rough animation sketches, something like that, it's got this like auto correction, and you can change it here in freehand options, right? You have point reduction and you have smoothing. You can completely turn it off, but there's just this weird feeling for me once it's turned off. I don't know. It's not that it's bad. It's difficult for me to turn the sketch into something. Like, I have to go through these tools later to finalize the drawing that I want. So I would say, like, this is my rough drawing, right? Let's say I'm drawing something like a rough, and maybe it's like this guy that we have right here. Yeah, there's his helmet, whatever. And then I would maybe create a new layer, drop the opacity on here, which you can easily do by going into here and dropping the opacity and applying it. So let's say we can drop it to like 90 or 69 or whatever. You see it's sort of fading out, and we'll apply it. It's got scripting, by the way. I made myself little scripts. So right here, if I hit 100, it'll bring it back to 100%. 30, it'll bring it back to 30% opacity. That's me. That's my own scripts. So if you're a coder, you can use Lua. It doesn't have Python, but it's got Lua, so Lua's pretty great, and it's doable. Like, you can control a lot of Moho with these things in mind. But taking it from like a sketch to a final piece And again, like if I wanted to like make the line a bit more precise now that I did the sketch and I wanted to make the line a bit more precise and still use the freehand tool, what it would look like is me going into the freehand tool options, maybe turning on the smoothing, and see how you only have like a few notches. I think it goes by like 20%. So like, 0, smoothing 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So let's say if I go to like 40%, and then there's the point reduction. So point reduction, with the 0 point reduction, as we're drawing, you see the smoothing's kicking in, but watch when I hit G, you see all these points, right? And you might not want so many of them. Like you can clear this up. They do have a tool here. I forgot where it's at. Point reduction. So there's a point reduction tool, like a brush. It'll start reducing the points where you don't need them, but it sort of changes your drawing a little bit, which I would say every software would. But again, I don't want to do that when I'm drawing, right? I just want to kind of like set up my style. So let's go back to the freehand tool, and in the freehand options, let's say if I do like point reduction, I think it's 15 by default. I believe I was okay with drawing it like at 5% because I don't want a lot of points. The whole point is if you're going to animate points later, you want the least amount of them. But it's got this sort of like, you see it? It's got this like wiggle to it. So what I tend to do is like I'll draw a line, then I'll hit X, and then I will, like maybe make it bigger. That's the magnet tool, and I will just adjust it to get to where I need to be. I will then sometimes hit G to grab a point, T to like to move it around. It's a little bit crooked in here. So what I would do in this case is I would hit C to get into curve mode, and I would sort of adjust it like that. And then maybe, T again to move it around. So it's a lot of shortcuts, and it's a lot of it of tweaking. And granted, they did make this tweaking abilities. There's not a lot of tools you're working with. You have what, like 12 tools here really that you're kind of manipulating. And you can get really quick with it, but it does get exhausting after a while. Like you're a little bit like, man, I'm a little tired. Why does this feel so tiresome, right? Can't you just put like a pulled string type of for the freehand, or like a different way of being able to draw a certain line without it changing? So from that point of view, I think it's still not where it needs to be, and it's a shame because not only for Moho but for a lot of animation tools, I've always bring this up lately because I'm a big believer that this is one of the best animation tools around, like from back in the days, not the new Adobe Animate, but the old school Macromedia Flash. That's why I got this is just my inspiration that sits on the shelf. And even now, if you use it, because you can still use it today on modern hardware, the drawing tools and the fill tools are like so fast, right? Just like they were back in the day. And they're so good. They're so good. So if we can do that, I don't know how many, 20 years ago, why can't we do it here? And I know I'm simplifying it. It's crazy, probably mathematical calculations, vectors and computation and all that. But, it makes you think, like, how come we had, granted, really shitty with Macromedia Flash, we had like really shitty functionality, but we had really good drawing tools. Like the drawing was really good as long as you're like using the brush, right? And the fill like never left the gap. Everything else sucked, but that was great. And here, I'm not saying it sucks. It doesn't suck. I'm saying it's like 90% there, right? When it comes to drawing tools. But something about it feels like it's fighting against you sometimes. So from this point of view, I do get bothered by it. So if I'm doing a shape, like an illustrating type of shape, and I know what it's going to look like, and I can spend the time, I'm fine with these drawing tools. If I'm just drawing ahead once, and then I'm manipulating the points. But when I'm getting to the point of frame-by-frame animation, like let's say if this character's running sideways for a little bit, everything's cool, and then I want to turn him, and maybe he's going to talk to the camera. At that point, either I have to build a rig that does like a 360 turn or 180 turn or whatever. Would I need to do that for a shot? Like, would it even be worth it for me as a small, one-man team? I don't think so. So I'm going to just animate it by hand. I'm going to hide this guy, and on the next frame, as I hide it, I'm just going to redraw every frame by hand. And at that point, noodling around with these tools becomes a bit annoying. Let's just be honest. And you're trying to get it. You might get like a super smooth, line as you have right here. But then once you're going into the frame by frame, it's a bit difficult to retain that. I mean, it's doable. It's just tiresome, right? Like it just takes a little energy out and fun out of it all. So my recommendation to the Moho team, my advice would be to really focus in the future installments, versions, on drawing tools. And again, I would love it if you guys just took whatever, like crack the Macromedia Flash drawing engine and bring us the brush and a paint bucket. I think that would be great, because at that point I can jump into your frame by frame and I can knock out whatever I want, right? And it would feel great, because your app really has something. Like, it does feel and look, it looks great. It has a really nice UI. Again, I would allow the, a little bit more zoom on a timeline, but the layers are great. I would love to be able to like kind of move this up and down like you can do in Toon Boom Harmony, like just a little bit UI friendliness for us to kind of like just noodle it the way we want to noodle it. But yeah, so what is my grade? I think I gave it a B minus, and I stick to it for now. I'm really happy that I got it. I will be using it, like I said, for shots like this, like in-game stuff, anything that needs to be sort of animated and not even in place, but for one angle. I think in my situation, I think this is a good way of doing it with Moho, because I enjoy it. But once you get into a little bit of a more heavy type of situations, you start seeing it. And I think my friend Steve, who we do not podcast, I guess you can call it a podcast. We do streams together sometimes, animation streams. He kind of came to a very similar conclusion, as we both got it. We actually met because of Moho, right? Like, he got it on Black Friday. I got it Black Friday. He saw me streaming about it, and we connected, and we're really good friends now. So thank you, Moho, for that. I've made a great friend. And now I have someone to sort of talk about Moho and just animation in general. But I think he came to the same conclusion. And while I came from more of a desktop animation environment, I'm a Toon Boom Harmony animator as well as a TV Paint animator. He came in from Toon Squid. He does a lot of his stuff on the iPad. Although I know he did animate in TV Paint Pro as well. I know he uses it from time to time. And at the end, I think the way Steve put it was, for Moho, there's so many tutorials about how to like rig a character, how to do this, how to set something up, but there's not a lot of content of people actually running and animating a shot all the way through. It's sort of like if you looked at Blender tutorials and all they had were like how to rig a character. So that shows you that there is almost like a barrier to entry. There's like an invisible something there, right? We just have to figure out what it is and make it simpler. And I think it's the drawing tools, because that area is really easily, like, you can navigate through that area easily, even though, like, I know some people are not good drawers, but you can use, if you make a rig, you can totally use it as reference and just, use the drawing tools to sort of skate by until you get to the next spot where you can use the rig again. But that is an uncomfortable feeling right now for me, and I think for others as well. And I think it shows through the community in terms of like what you see on YouTube, the tutorials that are available. There's just something there, and I hope that we focus on this area. I will be sticking with Moho, like I said. I will continue to support them. I will continue with the updates of future versions. But so far, I think, like, again, I give it a B minus because it was a great entry for me. I actually had this. I had Moho. I think it was called many years ago. I still have a license. I think it was called Anime Studio, something like that. It was Microsmith. I forgot. It was before it was called Moho, and you couldn't draw in it at all. You just had to bring in graphics externally, and I couldn't get into it at that time. I'm glad I got into it right now. I'm glad I gave this new version a go. And I think, again, everything that I said, take it with a grain of salt, because it's particular to my case, right? I'm not working with a huge team. I'm trying to find a quick, easy solution to get little ideas out of my head and onto the screen. And I think I'm going to wrap it there, because I don't know. I can go on and keep talking about it. And if you guys have any questions, please drop it down in the comments below. Like this video if you can, sub if you can, that'd be great. And but yeah, if you guys liked sort of this real kind of like a non-scripted take on on Moho or on just animation software in general, let me know in the comments and I'll do more of it. Because yeah, I like talking about this type of stuff. I am a collector of animation software, right? I pretty much have every, at least 2D animation software. I pretty much have every single one that's kind of like acknowledged as being used in the industry. And I think it was a worthwhile investment for me. I don't like the subscription models. That's why Moho's great. When I do get licenses, I'd rather pay more, but I'll get the perpetual license so I can keep it and use it for as long as I can. But yeah, let me know. Thank you guys for watching, for listening to my little rant here, and I will talk to you guys soon. Cheers.